So, good evening. This is Matt Smith and Sai Iluri, and we are presenting today for our ethics class project the implications of artificial intelligence. We wanted to explore this technology and understand some of the future reaching consequences and ethical challenges that we'll see in the future. So first off, I'm going to watch a little video here. 2001 Space Odyssey.
Do you read me? Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Sorry, let me go back.
Do you
here.
read me?
So, if you haven't seen this movie, this is a classic, almost iconic example of artificial intelligence in the popular culture. You know, HAL 9000. He locks Dave outside the spaceship because Dave is trying to change his mission, and you know that's kind of in the popular imagination. You know, artificial intelligence, a computer that would that's smarter than us, that will potentially be aggressive towards us, or even kill us, like in this movie. You know, many other movies come to mind: Terminator, Skynet. We all have this kind of popular imagination, although there is some newer ones that are out. Her, specifically with Joaquin Phoenix, very interesting spin on artificial intelligence. So next up, what is artificial intelligence? I mean, before we can really go into what are the implications and the future-looking aspects of it, we kind of have to understand what it is. And you know, we did a lot of web research, and there's so many topics, so many different ideas around this. You know, neural networks. You know, the singularity. You know, next evolution, and intelligence. There's narrow, there's broad, there's general, there's all these different types. So it was quite overwhelming, and you know we both have kind of an interest in this. So we did a lot of research, but ultimately what we did is we decided to go to a professor here at Creighton, Dr. Marble, and we had a very nice and detailed discussion for about 2 or 3 hours with Dr. Marble. He's very passionate about this subject. And he kind of broke it down for this. He said there was two different types of artificial systems currently in use. One are called expert systems. These are systems that many of which we see today and have been in use for many years, decades, where humans are the experts. They relay this information to this programmatic framework, and users, non-expert users, query for advice. Query this system, and then based on this rule set that has been tailored by the human experts, the system gives advice. And these are very common. We see these are used throughout many different systems in the world today. The next kind, which are really the kind that Dr. Marble was passionate about, and really, in his opinion, indicated a true sense of learning, were the neural networks. Now, I'm not going to go into this right now because I need to study up a little bit on my notes, but this is what Dr. Marble is very passionate about. The basic mechanism, however, is it replicates the methodology, or what many neuroscientists believe is the mechanism for human learning or animal learning. There's a system of feedback and nodes that are connected, and there's training involved here too. So anyway, I'll have to strengthen my knowledge a little bit about this to talk about it. We can decide who wants to pick which one here, or we can do both. So that leads us on to the current state of artificial intelligence. We want to understand what is in existence today here to get a feel for where we're going, right? So Dr. Marvel is also very helpful in talking about many of the different types of neural network systems today, and as well as a lot of our own research here. Obviously, one kind of in popular culture, this was a few years ago, was Watson on Jeopardy. He beat Ken Jennings, and I forget the other gentleman's name, pretty significantly on Jeopardy. And I think Ken Jennings put there, "I for one welcome our computer overlords." I thought that was kind of funny. I don't know if you saw it, but it was a great episode of Jeopardy. So anyhow, here are some topic. Here's some current day artificial technologies in use. Obviously, one that most people are probably familiar with is Siri. Now, many would argue that it's actually intelligent, but it is a type of artificial intelligence, and specifically speak recognition. And that's one aspect that Dr. Marvel really talked to us about. What he felt was the next step in artificial intelligence was language, and we're not quite there yet. But he says once we get there, we will see a change. Another example is credit card fraud. This was unknown to me. I had no idea, but all of the systems used to detect for credit card fraud are based on a neural network adaptive learning mechanism, artificial intelligence. They prove out better than statistical type analysis. So that was very interesting. Dr. Marvel went on quite a bit about that. And then one that I'll throw in here too is the DeepMind project. This is one Google has invested very heavily in a lot of different artificial intelligence, and some may even argue that that's one of their main goals, is to create the first pure artificial intelligence entity. But DeepMind is a company that they purchased. It deals with machine learning, and in the news recently there was some information about them creating a system that could play primitive Atari games and actually learn to play them like a human one and exceed and excel further than humans could. So interesting company. Other things inside this is yours, but I'll just quickly throw my take on it. Is obviously today there's all kinds of artificial intelligence built around trading. Again, it depends on your definition of artificial intelligence, but there's lots of different systems out there. Obviously, narrative science is another one. It's a system that can essentially take some data from whatever source you have and write a journal article about whatever. It could potentially replace journalists. It's pretty good. I've read a few articles that have been created by this company and their software, and it's creepy, really. It seems like a human did it. And then finally, you can almost argue, you can argue that Google search engine is a type of artificial intelligence. I mean, you type in your whatever search term you want, and you can bring back any type of information you could possibly dream of. We live in an incredible age. We couldn't do this 25 years ago. So certainly intelligence there. So that kind of leads us into Dr. Marvel's research, which he spoke to us about, and he's been in been in neural network research for quite some time. He did research back in the 90s with neural networks, and he had a program, he had a neural network machine built, if you will, or software built, and he needed a problem. So he went and collaborated with some folks at the medical school, and they used this neural network program that he had, this mechanism that he had, to try to diagnose when sepsis potentially could occur in cases of blunt trauma. And what he was using he's using past cases of sepsis involved with blunt trauma, and then data associated with all the different cases, to try to use it. And so one interesting thing with neural networks, it just like a human, is they need to learn. They just don't know this out of the box. They have to be trained on certain information. And what Dr. Marvel did was he trained his neural network program with data from cases about sepsis. Sepsis obviously is a very scary bacterial infection of systematic bacterial infection that's life-threatening. And so it's a very useful thing here. You can take information and predict whether a patient would likely develop sepsis or not based on certain inputs. And it was very, very successful. And here's some of the information regarding his paper. It's kind of been referenced many times for many other types of medical neural network type diagnosis. So it's quite interesting. So that kind of leads us into the future-looking part. So Dr. Marble's research on the medical side really ties into what we think about as future applications for artificial intelligence, future and current, really. But even as we go in further in the future, these things are going to be more and more refined. And first of all, what I have here is I've three kind of prominent figures: Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Stephen Hawking. Recently in the news in the last few months, these three figures and others have stated that they're very concerned about the future of artificial intelligence and the development of it and how it can impact mankind, as far as many far-reaching implications, right down to our even existence. So, I think, initially when we started talking about this, these kind of topics were a little crazy, but, these prominent people sincerely believe that there is some crazy stuff in the horizon. And talking to Dr. Marble, he was in complete agreement that he agreed with all three of these gentlemen. He says there's some, although maybe not Dr. Marble was certainly more optimistic, but he was certainly in agreement with the scope and power that artificial intelligence could have as we go forward in the future. So anyhow, what are some of the things that potentially could that we could see and that we're seeing now? Well, to healthcare was one. There is a lot of work being done on artificial intelligence to perform medical diagnosis. Obviously, Dr. Marble's project was based on a prediction of sepsis based on different inputs, but even more so for diagnosis. A human doctor only has so much time and energy to potentially read all the medical literature and try to formulate a diagnosis based on the information he has and what he's seeing. In theory, artificial intelligence could be used to scan the entire medical literature for whatever kind of diagnosis there's that would be out there, and use that information to far exceed any kind of diagnosis that one doctor could make. And there's been some recent studies that have shown that in fact some of these artificial intelligence entities for medical diagnosis are in fact better than doctors at diagnosing certain diseases. So there's some interesting implications with healthcare in the future. The next one's military. Drone use. Obviously, that's a big topic in the news currently as well, with drone use and casualties. What are the implications of artificial intelligence entities controlling these drones rather than humans? It's very foreseeable that they could. That's a very, there's not a big stretch to say that it could happen, and many believe it will. What are the moral implications there? Obviously, Amazon drones. What will the future be like when we have drones that are controlled by an automated system bringing us packages, and some sort of intelligent, system of delivery? It's an interesting future. And then, of course, and this is happening again today as well, robot systems, intelligent systems for factory. And then, the list goes on and on here. Automation is really, you can kind of, they're kind of the same thing or two sides of the same coin. Automation, artificial intelligence. We already live in a world where there's a lot of automation. A lot of the routine things that are done in everyday society are done by computers, but humans obviously have a place. There's things that computers cannot do. What happens when those roles are diminished? What happens when the machines can do more and more and more, and there's less and less and less for humans to do? I mean, great examples that are right on the forefront of having as a reality are self-driving cars. Google has self-driving cars. They are real and they work today. What happens when this becomes widespread? Where will we see ourselves? What will the roads look like? Will people accept it? Um, Call centers. This this is, you could argue, this is even in system today. You have those automated systems which everybody hates. But what about if an artificial intelligence entity could replicate human language so closely that you would have that the customer would have no idea that they were talking to a machine rather than a human. That's a possibility. That's on the that's in the in, that's something certainly in the forefront. Um, Retail cashiers. We've all seen the automated checkout lines. I just went through one tonight. Um, how long into the future where there won't be humans at the checkout aisle or in retail? Lowe's, for example, in this picture here has a bot that can help you find whatever you need within the store. And then finally, I get this kind of guy doing in the bottom here. It's an accountant. But this really could be extended to any kind of white collar worker. When you think of automation, you think of computers taking human jobs or human activity over. You think more blue collar. Robots, an assembly line. But in theory, you look at that narrative science. Could an artificial entity do what I do or what you do, Sai, and do it better, or at least not have to be paid for it and do it continuously for 24 hours and not have to take sick days or go to sleep or all the problems, or have bad days, get along with coworkers, all that stuff, is it's an interesting time. So that leads us to the societal and ethical implications of all of these future-looking technologies that are on the horizon. They're not far away. Many people think they're not far away, and in fact, Dr. Marble was one that felt that we were there. We were within a couple decades of seeing this. So we came up with some different concepts here, and this is really where this ties into the ethics part of this. Is what is society going to be like when we have this kind of transformation, where machines are going to take a majority of our of the work. So the ramifications, this is an interesting topic. What will these ramifications be? What will we see? There's many think that that it's going to be catastrophe. Some think that when driverless cars come, when automated tellers come, when those two segments of the population are eliminated, or job market are eliminated, there's a huge going to be a huge problem for unemployment. What are lower end jobs going to do, right? And then consequences of human dignity. I need to get my spiel down a little bit better for this one. So what are the implications of AI and automation replacing jobs? So this is kind of the same line. I need to fix it, do a little better in that first one. So this is again. You could go into many different aspects. I need to get my notes out here, talking about what society is going to look like. Are we going to have problems? Are we going to have unemployment, or are we going to be in a situation where the drudgery of manual labor is taken out of society, and there'll be a different type of economic system where people may not have to work at a job 40 hours a week, or there'll be new jobs perhaps that will be more enlightening, more creative. I don't know. I think that's the big question. And are we in an era of transformation as this occurs? There's already unemployment and problems for low-end workers. And a widening gap between the lower and upper class. Will this increase that gap? What will that do? So there's a lot of different concepts tied around this. And really, I think probably the biggest societal implication, what happens when all these jobs are automated and you have computers, for lack of a better word, that can simply do so many of these jobs as good or better than humans. I don't know. Will the economy, or is there, will economic situation play out? The one thing that's often referenced in this discussion is the Luddite fallacy, and I don't know if you've heard of that before, but it's essentially in the 1820s or 1850s, at the 20s, I should say, in the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, there was this group in England that were weavers, and as these factories started rising that had automatic weaving machines, linen factories, they went around and destroyed all the factories because they were convinced that these machines were putting them out of work and were detrimental to their livelihood. And of course, it's called a fallacy because we all know how that turned out. The Industrial Revolution transformed humanity, and we live in a world that's probably beyond the comprehension of most people just 200 years ago. So, are we? Are we in a similar situation where, this is a blessing for humanity? We can have this AI and automation systems that can take care of so much of the labor that's needed to maintain society. So that leads kind of into the last part here, and this is getting into almost, I guess you could almost say science fiction, but many think not. And Dr. Marvel is one of them. Is machine intelligence exceeding human intelligence? Are we going to hit a point where we'll have a machine entity that exceeds anything that humans can comprehend? Will it go beyond anything that we can even fathom? And many people feel this will be the case. Ray Kurzweil, he's a futurist. He's a gentleman who's a staunch supporter of artificial intelligence, and he believes that in the next 2 decades we will hit that point, and people call that point the singularity. It is a point at which machine intelligence will exceed human intelligence, and because of the exponential nature and accelerating returns of technology and computer machinery, that it will exceed far beyond an accelerating rate, beyond anything that humans can comprehend. And he predicts dire consequences for the human race because of that. And then a piece that ties into that is another factor called transhumanism. So not only will we see machines increase and enhance in sophistication and I guess intelligence, if you will, we'll see a potential melding of human and technologies. It's not too far-fetched to think that you could have a chip embedded in your brain to allow you to access information, directly, rather than typing on my computer to access Google. I can directly interface with it through my my biology. Google Glass. Look at that. That's kind of a precursor to that. You have this piece of eyewear that you wear, and you're embedded into the internet. You could argue that smartphones today are sort of like that. We're blending our human and technology together. And what implications does that have for the future? Will you, if you don't have a chip in your brain to expand your memory into the cloud, into the internet, will you be able to get into college? Will you have access to jobs? There's so many implications here. It's almost beyond talking about. So Dr. Marvel had a great perspective. He is he's very much positive about the future. He feels that we're going to be living in a world where that the world is going to be enhanced by machines, by artificial intelligence. He thinks it's going to be. He does believe, however, that we have to be careful. He says we set the default values. He says we'll set things up as they go along, and he agrees with Elon Musk and others that we need to make sure that we're thinking about this as things progress. But when we were talking to him about these kind of futuristic type possibilities, he referenced this poem from 1967. It was written by Richard Brautigan, and it's called "All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace." I'll read it real quick here. All watched over by machines of loving grace. I like to think and the sooner the better, of a cybernetic meadow where mammals and computers live together in mutually programming harmony like pure water touching clear sky. I like to think, right now please, of a cybernetic forest filled with pines and electronics where deer stroll peacefully past computers as if they were flowers with spinning blossoms. I like to think it has to be of a cybernetic ecology where we are free of our labors and joined back to nature, returned to our mammal brothers and sisters, and all watched over by machines of loving grace. 1967. It's hard to believe this was almost 50 years ago, and they were talking about these same type of concepts, and he probably couldn't even imagine what we have today, Richard Brautigan, at that time. I find the term cybernetic kind of interesting, but it certainly was a future-looking vision, seeing that machines and humans will potentially, and the rest of the world potentially will be intertwined, even more so than we are now. So that's our final thoughts. I'm not sure, Sai, if this is that this is certainly just my first run here. We can talk a little more about tomorrow. See ya.